clicking go live.
Cool.
Here we go. All right. What's going on, guys? Give me just a moment to make sure I mute the correct stream here so you guys aren't hearing things double. Fantastic. Got it going there. And I'm going to tweet that bad boy out right there. And here we go. All right. So, hey, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird, and I am joined by a very special guest today. Today, I'm joined by someone whose career is actually a little bit more wide-spanning than I had been aware of before. I wanted to do a bit of research before this, but this is a gentleman that is very familiar with storytelling. He has done his own form of storytelling for a little while now, consisting of YouTube videos as well as full-length features and many things in between. And I'm very excited to talk to him because he most recently had his release of his own film, written and directed, that is called Onyx the Fortuitous and the Talisman of Souls, which is currently available on Screambox, which is Bloody Disgusting streaming service. So make sure you go and check it out there if you haven't yet. But I am fortunate enough to be joined by Andrew BOWSER. Welcome to the channel, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this chat.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I have a boatload of questions, but I know you have limited time, so I don't want to waste any of it. And so we will dive right in. But if anyone watching has any questions along the way, make sure you shoot them into the chat, and I will try to get to them. But Andrew, anyone that joins me on the channel for a chat, I always start with, how did you get into the horror genre? Like, what was the first experience you remember having with it, and how did it evolve over time?
Well, I was not into horror until I was probably like 13 or 14 because I was such a scaredy kid. I remember seeing, I grew up really Christian. I grew up in a Christian household and went to church every Sunday, and I remember being told that horror movies could let things into your life. You know, they could bring in dark things, and you'd be partnering with the devil on certain levels if you watched that stuff. So it really was built up in my head to be something that I just shouldn't go near. And I remember late one night there was a trailer on TV, I think for Child's Play 2. And I just remember seeing Chucky say something like, "I'm coming for you, Andy." And my name was Andrew, or Andy at that time. So it really shook me, and I just thought I could never go near this stuff. But I also had a fascination and was drawn toward the horror films and even darker comic books, you know, that I would see at the comic shop. Like, I'd go there to buy my Marvel stuff, but I'd also see The Crow or The Mask comic book and be curious about those things. So it was actually, weirdly, it was a film, shooting a film that brought me into horror. I was in an indie film when I was like 11 or 12, and we were all staying, all the adults, everybody in the cast, and me and a couple of the kids in the cast stayed at a cabin in Maine. Huh. And during the production, and they wanted to watch Evil Dead. And I wanted to be cool and do whatever the adults were doing. So I said, yeah, let's do it. Let's watch it. And I sat on the couch and was terrified. And then I got up at one point, kind of stood behind the couch, get a little further away from the TV. And then I think by the time the movie was over, I was like in the kitchen watching from behind a wall. But it was that viewing experience that really, I think, finally made me engage with the genre, because I still had fun and I was scared, but really enjoyed the ride. And I remember after that getting back to Maryland, where I'm from, and then I started renting horror films. And I started kind of confronting my fears and renting all the Child's Plays, and then, you know, even Hellraiser and all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, and just fell in love, because I think it was kind of healthy for me to live through those things despite the fear that I had around them.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I can tell that you must have gravitated towards Child's Play. I did as well. You know, myself, I think Child's Play and Freddy are my top two slashers. I'm a fan of personality when it comes to slashers. Yeah. And yeah, you know, if you'll excuse the expression, I did recently take a look at your little Willie. And, I was very impressed, to say the least.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
That must have been a riff on Andy Barclay, you know, kind of situation going, or the character, of course. And so that was a lot of fun to see. We'll get to that, but
Yeah.
so what subgenres did you find yourself gravitating towards over time as your love of the genre grew?
Well, I think what you just said is one of them, is personality based slashers. I like a slasher with a presence, and no offense to the slashers that, wear masks and say nothing, because I
The
love
walking
them.
wall, Michael Myers, as I call him.
Yeah, because I love Halloween and I love Friday the 13th for other reasons.
Hmm.
I love the sprawling mythology of Friday the 13th. I really like how improvised and messy that mythology is, and even how messy the later Halloween mythology became. Not the most current, but five and
Thorn
six.
trilogy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but it was always Freddy, and it was Chucky, and then I think when I saw, weirdly enough, House, not Houseu, but House.
Yeah.
I fell in love with creatures, and Gremlins 2 was the first. Actually, Roger Rabbit was the first movie I saw in theaters, and I think Gremlins 2 was one of the next, because Gremlins 2 was 90, I believe. And Gremlins, and seeing House, I thought House was like a big movie. I saw it on like TNT or something, and I just assumed it was as big of a movie as any of these others.
Hmm.
But I really fell in love with like practical creature design. And I remember even seeking out House 2 and still loving it because the practical effects were so well done.
Hmm.
So yeah, definitely on the slasher side, it's personality driven slasher. And then otherwise it's creatures, monster movies. I was never big into just strictly haunting or ghosts or supernatural.
Hmm.
I mean, I love Poltergeist because it's amazing, but as a subgenre, I'm not like devoted to it. Even still, I'm not gonna. I'll watch all the Conjuring movies. I'll watch all of the Insidious movies, but they don't really, get me.
Okay.
Yeah.
That actually kind of leads into the next bit, which normally we take a little bit more time on, but what I think I'm going to request is like a immediate 1 to 2 word response to each of these subgenres. Right,
Okay,
I'm curious.
interesting.
So let's start with slashers. We know
Okay.
positive on that, right?
Positive on slashers. I still think there's plenty to be done with the slasher genre. I love it. I don't look down on it. I'm not one of those horror fans that thinks a slasher film is like less than anything else. I love slashers.
Okay, creature features.
Love creatures. I mean, that's probably my top. I'm a monster guy, and that's probably top of the list for me.
Same with me. Yep, absolutely. Paranormal.
Paranormal, yeah, it's not my cup of tea. It's not what I'm drawn to.
Okay. Serial killer / true crime.
I do love true crime. I do personally research a lot of serial killers, and even for a time was trying to write a script based on the life of Jeffrey Dahmer, but then Ryan Murphy got to it first. Even though my take on it would have been wildly different.
Okay.
But I recently read a graphic novel that it's up there. It's called it's called something like "Do You Know What Ed Gein Done?"
Huh.
And it's from the artist that did Goon, the comic.
Oh, okay.
And let me get the exact title because
Sure.
it's really good. It's a very I mean, it's almost a like illustrated textbook of the Ed Gein story. Did you hear what Eddie Gein done?
Oh, okay.
Fascinating. So I do like serial killers and true crime, but I do like when it's dealt with, I don't know, in a sophisticated way.
Okay. Fair enough.
Mindhunter, etc. Yeah.
Let's do religious horror with your background. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely been attracted to it, and I watched those movies. I watched like the last Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I loved the original Exorcist and Exorcist 3. It's, I guess I'm attracted to it because of my history, but I will say I didn't grow up Catholic. So a lot of times the religious horror films are looking into like the Catholic faith and the tenets found in that faith and that sect, and that doesn't hit for me as much.
Gotcha.
Okay. I'd like to. I've written a horror film that's kind of about my religious deconstruction, and it's maybe a little more up my alley.
Nice.
Well, obviously, I wrote it.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Yeah.
Dark fantasy / folk horror.
Also never been huge for me.
Okay.
Folk horror kind of misses me, but I really don't know why. I love the original Wicker Man, but it's not going to be on my like top 10 list.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess if you consider like Midsummer to be connected to kind of folk horror,
Yeah.
not really big for me.
Same here. Yeah.
Yeah, not sure why.
Found footage.
Found footage, I have a love-hate relationship with because I loved the original Blair Witch. I worked at a movie theater when it came out. I think there's a lot to be done within found footage, and I've even attempted to do some found footage films. But I guess what I see done with found footage at a large scale never works for me. I really like the restrictions that it could bring and storytelling within those restrictions. And I even made a film where, the film felt truly found. There were no edits unless someone could have pressed stop and pressed record. I find that often with found footage movies, by the time they've skipped over their own rules just to make a regular movie that happens to be shot handheld.
Yeah.
But I felt that. I mean, but this is how, I don't know, dumb I am. I mean, I didn't like the first Paranormal Activity. I saw it in theaters and I was like, this is fucking dumb. and then it was like, a fucking phenomenon. So, but they didn't follow any rules. They were filming themselves eating Chinese food for no reason. If you're going to ditch your own restrictions, I guess I'm just out as a viewer, but maybe that's because of my interest as a filmmaker.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So then the last two you can burn through would be horror, sci-fi, and psychological horror.
Definitely more of a psychological horror guy than I love a movie where someone is just going bonkers, but still mixed with good creature stuff. Like I love In the Mouth of Madness.
Yes.
I mean, I watched that on my TV VCR. Like if it's not Ghostbusters, it's In the Mouth of Madness or Fright Night. But I love a good movie where someone who is relatively stable by the end of it has, drawn crosses on themselves and is losing their mind in a padded cell. But there's still monsters. There's a lot of fantasy and folklore in the Mouth of Madness. Jacob's Ladder. I love Jacob's Ladder. Sci-fi, like Alien. I love it. Stone cold classic. It's not going to be on my favorites list. Some sci-fi always loses me a little bit, and I don't know why. Except for I love Hellraiser 4. I do love Hellraiser 4.
I do too. The one that goes to space, of course. I love the first 4 movies very much. I think they're all great.
I do too. And I like Event Horizon, but there's definitely sci-fi loses me. I've never been a big sci-fi guy.
Okay.
Even when it's blended with horror.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got into acting, like you mentioned, as a kid. How did that process evolve? Because it seemed like at some point there was a changeover to more behind the camera situation.
Yeah. I started acting when I was little in Washington, D.C. And I think it was because of seeing, an Indiana Jones movie or something. I just thought that looks like fun, just pretending to be on an adventure all the time. And my dad had done some local theater. And so we both did some local theater together when I first started acting. And honestly, as I grew up, I continued to do it through high school, and I auditioned for things like Rushmore and That 70s Show, and I auditioned for The Faculty, and I remember really, really hoping I'd get it. I auditioned for 4 movies that Elijah Wood got, and I'm like, well, why did you even have an unknown like me show up at the casting office in Baltimore, and you're just going to get Elijah Wood? But anyway, but I really was not good at auditioning. I didn't like the feeling of the rug getting pulled out from under you, and actors have to cope with that, and they walk into that situation knowing they might change the scene on me, they might change the song on me that I've got to sing for the Les Mis audition, and I hated that feeling. I just hated it. I loved preparing and feeling like I could wrap my mind around knocking something out of the park, and I remember auditioning for Les Mis on Broadway as a kid, and the accompanist just started playing my song in the wrong key.
Oh.
And instead of saying, hey, actually stop, you're in this key, it should be in this key, I was too nervous, so I just tried, and it went out of my range, and I bombed the audition. I sounded like I couldn't sing at all.
Hmm.
And I remember auditioning for The Client. I think it was a Susan Sarandon.
Mm-hmm.
And they had said, absolutely no. Oh, no. They had said that we want to hear Southern kids. And my mom's from Oklahoma, so it was easy for me to slip into a Southern accent.
Mm-hmm.
And I practiced the whole script with a Southern accent. And then on the day, they were like, "What are you doing?" No. I don't want to hear a Southern accent. Like, just that flip of like, God damn it. And so I remember as a kid, I didn't know that it was directing, but I just remember feeling like, I don't like this feeling. I like creating worlds and I like going on adventures and building stories, but I don't like the lack of control. So I focused on writing and directing. I think at the time it was a little subconsciously because I just didn't like that feeling of not having control.
Mm-hmm.
And the second I wrote my first script, like my first shitty, high school script, already I could feel, oh man, and then I can say who plays these roles and I can say where we shoot it. I can even say what we shoot on what day. I mean, all of a sudden I was like, oh, I get it. This is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So acting was kind of like the little entryway into just the world of production, but it was never, I mean, I would argue it was never truly a passion.
Gotcha.
It was always a bit of a wrestling match between me and acting. I just wasn't one of those actors that could do that. I just didn't have the thick enough skin. So yeah, so then I started writing and directing and then went to film school, and I never really stopped acting just because my friends at film school would cast me in their stuff. Mm-hmm. Since I was one of the only film students that had a background in acting.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously it's ironic that anytime I tried to not act, Onyx kept popping up. And so and then my first film to really get into major festivals was yet again something that I acted in.
Huh.
But yeah, it was almost by default, really.
Okay. And so, yeah, how did that evolve into you creating this Onyx character and all of these YouTube videos that suddenly started popping off? How did that all come about?
Well, it came about because I was working at a place called Nerdist, and I was an in-house producer and editor, and I was kind of fighting to direct more sketches for them. And they just didn't, I don't know, that was a weird place, but they no matter what I showed them of things I had directed, they didn't give me many directing gigs within the company. And so I just started making my own videos, and I started taking classes at UCB to kind of keep myself just exercised and activated on the creative front, because the job at Nerdist sometimes wasn't super creative and stimulating. And then while I was doing improv, I really, and I hadn't done improv since I was like a little kid, and I only did it in like warm-up classes, for drama class and acting classes that I had taken. But I really fell in love with building characters again, and partnered with a friend from class to go out and shoot this first Onyx video, which was Weird Gamer Guy. And at the time I thought I was just building a character around some nervous tics that had come to my mind. Some were based on me, and some were just, I thought it'd be interesting if there was a character that was so uncertain of everything that he always backpedaled and said, I don't know, after any statement. And but then I realized as I would perform him that it was really me kind of exercising all of my anxieties and a lot of fears that I had as a child. And that's why Onyx is so stuck in his childhood, and even the movie deals with that, because over the years I've realized Onyx is like a processing agent for my own anxiety and undiagnosed issues that I had as a child that I didn't realize until I was an adult. I had OCD. I still have OCD, and an anxiety disorder and all sorts of things. And so Onyx really became like my 5th grade self frozen in time. And I fell in love with him. And honestly, he's the only thing I've really done as a performer for many years. And it just worked on the internet. And so I kept investigating his emotional life and interior life as these videos were going viral because of my interests as a writer and filmmaker. And then I'm fortunate that the popularity of him on the internet then kind of collided with me launching a Kickstarter and being able to get a proper story narrative feature with him off the ground.
Yeah, that's that was going to be what I was going to segue into. But before, do you know offhand how many Onyx YouTube videos there were?
Well, the ones that there were a lot. There were some that nobody cared about.
Because there's some that are in the credits of the film,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. The first one was Weird Gamer Guy. Then there was, it helps if I write them out. There was Weird Gamer Guy,
Okay.
then Weird Satanist Guy, then Weird Arby's Guy, then technically Weird Furry Guy, which didn't get many views. I made one called Weird Sinkhole Guy
Okay.
that did pretty well. There was Weird Anime Guy, and that was at Anime Expo. These are, oh, I did one that was like Weird Mothman Guy, and it was Onyx talking about the Mothman, and nobody cared about that one. Oh, and the one that most like younger people know is that I made a video where Onyx is buying hentai at a comic shop,
Okay.
and the name of the video is actually just Geek TV, What's in the Bag, because it's presented as an actual piece
Okay.
of like you know, a nerdy video company like Nerdist filming like at a comic shop, asking people what they purchased, and Onyx bought really fucked up hentai. And but Weird Gamer, Satanist, Arby's, and that Geek TV video, I feel like are the ones that really landed with the internet in a way to where they're still referenced today. Like every other week, me talking about hentai goes viral on TikTok. There's a video, someone just reposted the video last week and it has 7 million views.
Dang.
Yeah, so he's, for better or for worse, that's what he's most famous for.
So then, was it the popularity of the character that made you be like, okay, well, I guess if I'm gonna make my own film, let's crowdfund this guy and
Yeah.
see if we can ride this horse all the way to an actual completed film.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, it was because I had 2 feature scripts. I had thought of making an Onyx film off and on over the years, but I was still investigating whether or not he had enough depth to build a feature around. I did a web series with him at Nerdist called Welcome to the Shadow Zone, and I felt like over the course of the Welcome to the Shadow Zone show, I realized, yes, you could make a movie with Onyx, but it took me figuring it out. I wrote a pilot for Onyx that we almost got funded, and it was going to star Bruce McCullough from Kids in the Hall as Onyx's dad. That didn't go. There was a time at Nerdist where our parent company, Legendary, wanted us to try to get micro-budget features going. So I pitched 3 different Onyx features. One was like him with a Terminator type guy who showed, it was called Beefy Bad Boy from Outer Space. It pretty much is Psycho Gorman, though.
Oh, okay.
But this is before Psycho Gorman. But and in that, I think in that ideation, I had come up with something close to Talisman of Souls. Actually, and this is something I don't think I've ever said, because this is a bit of trivia that even I forget. I think the Onyx movie kind of came from a pitch that I had built out about Barbara Crampton.
Oh.
I don't even know if I ever shared this pitch with her. I had worked on a pitch called Cult of Crampton, and it was going to be about a bunch of horror fans gathering in a house to like spend a haunted weekend with this, you know, horror royalty, this queen. And it turns out she is going to take their souls. And
Oh,
you know,
okay.
it was this meta thing where Barbara Crampton would play herself, but also play this kind of super villain. And then that actually really became Talisman of Souls.
Oh, okay.
But I think it was I had 2 scripts, one for a feature called House Mother, one for the feature version of Little Willie, that I just couldn't get financed. And during the pandemic, I was sitting here and thinking, like, my only way forward, if I'm going to get a proper feature going, is to try to leverage the internet love for Onyx into a feature.
Okay.
And I knew that it would be difficult because a lot of people that know Onyx don't know that I'm a filmmaker. A lot of people that know Onyx don't even know that he's a character.
I had no idea until I saw you at Mad Monster. So yeah, I was like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah. So it really was the only way to get a proper feature going. And luckily by that point, I'd fallen in love enough with the character and explored him enough to know that there was enough there emotionally, I think, to make a proper feature around.
Why do you think that he resonated so much with such a large group of people through the YouTube videos?
I think, you know, and I kind of clocked this early on. I had made a video, I made Weird Gamer Guy, and then at Nerdist, I actually shot Weird Satanist Guy like out on the street in front of the Nerdist office one night. And I remember this kind of in-office frenemy asking me, like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm making another video for that weird character. And this guy was like, lightning's not going to strike twice. And I walked off, and I was like, you motherfucker. He was this real, like, you know, one of those guys that you worked with that was constantly just trolling you.
Ah.
But it, you know, it really challenged me because I thought like, well, the gimmick might only work a couple times, but if the character is rich enough and if people like him, it's not really going to be a matter of tiring of the gimmick. I'm thinking there'll be a changeover where people say, I don't care what this guy does. I'd watch him make a sandwich, you know? So the criticism of the format and how that might become redundant maybe pushed me to make sure that the character had enough depth. Yeah, I just think it's his humility. I think it's his, I mean, people have written me over the years. They've said it's that dichotomy of really wanting to share with people, but then being terrified of exposing themselves. And he's this weird mashup of hyper verbose and then also, you know, incredibly insecure. So I think people just relate to that dichotomy of wanting to just say everything that's on their mind and then also being so terrified that people won't accept them if they reveal that much. And I mean, that really is like the heart of the character. He wants connection. That's why the film became about him finding friends. And the movie's not just about him, you know, it's not just a string out of gags. There's definitely plenty of gags.
But at the beginning, he says he's got so very many friends.
I know. It's so funny. When I wrote that intro was when I realized, like, oh, that's what the movie's about. As soon as he said, my many friends, it's just like, dude, you don't have, and, you know, I think you protest too much. So that's when I realized, oh, well, the movie's going to be about him finding those friends, and that helped shape the whole narrative. But I think that's what people respond to is kind of his longing to connect.
Well, let's dive a little deeper on the creation of the film. So you crowdfunded it through Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So what was your initial goal? How much did you eventually reach? And was that a surprise to you that you were actually able to achieve that? I'm very curious.
I mean, I think I had every emotion in the book over the course of those 45 days. When I launched the Kickstarter, I genuinely thought, doing the math, knowing that the videos have this many millions of views, even on TikTok alone, I had about 1 million followers when I launched the Kickstarter. On YouTube, and my YouTube is pretty dormant now, but I had about 250,000 subscribers. I thought, I mean, to reach my goal, I just need, you know, 7,000 people to be in for about $75. Like, we can do this. I almost thought it would be like a set it and forget it type of thing.
Yeah.
I would press launch and then just sit back and watch the money roll in. And I had a job at the time. I was full time at G4, the relaunch of that network.
Oh, the relaunch. Okay.
Yeah, and I was a full time sketch producer and director for them as they were building up the new offices and the new studios.
So people need to realize you're no bullshit. Like that's not a small feat. Working for Nerdist, working for G4, that's no small feat. Like Chris Hardwick's company went big after he created it. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And like G4 was an established entity. So like, you know, proper respect to you for all of that work as well, man.
Thank you. Well, it was nice because eventually at Nerdist, I did become the in-house director. So if anything came through that was a comedy sketch or a branded video, I was in the position to basically direct it first, you know, and if I was too busy with something else, then it could go to someone else in the company. But out of all the work I did over there, I eventually got into a place where I was looked at as the director for any of their content. So we made so many sketches, you know, it was like they do on SNL where every week they were doing a different commercial parody or music video parody. So it was great. It was a great proving ground to just direct everything under the sun. And while I was there, I mean, I directed hundreds of videos. We did literally a sketch a week for the 6-7 years that I was there. And some of them were, you know, big internet things like 35-40 million views.
Nice.
And it was a good lesson in like working for another entity, you know, even if I don't care about making a Star is Born Star Wars parody music video called A Star Wars is Born. If that's my job that week, I better do it well. And I was big on like never phoning it in, no matter what the concept was. Like, let's still try to make it funny enough in ways, even though it's got to kind of hit these internet quadrants to be successful. But yeah, so those jobs were really, I mean, that was like another film school basically.
Mm-hmm.
But so the week I launched the Kickstarter, I realized this is not going to be set it and forget it. This is going to be daily pumping out content, trying to reach every corner of the internet that might give a shit about this character. And I think in the first week we might have raised like 70,000, but then it was like slowing down, and I'm like, holy hell! Whoa!
Was it always set for 500,000?
Yeah, it was always set for 500.
Okay.
And the head of film at Kickstarter, who's an amazing person, told me at the time, she was like, you know, you might want to set a lower goal. That's pretty big for an indie feature. You know, you're not Zach Braff going to Kickstarter or Veronica Mars going to Kickstarter.
Right.
You're like, this is going to be a grind. But I just felt if I hadn't set it for 500 and I hadn't done it on Kickstarter where it's all or nothing, it wouldn't have galvanized my fan base, and it honestly wouldn't have like galvanized me and I mean, I woke up every day and I was like, I have to raise $10,000 today.
Mm-hmm.
And it really activates you, and it just activated every corner of my mind. I would think, oh, well, what's this podcast I could do, or what's a sketch I could do that would reach these types of people? Maybe I need to do an animated thing with Onyx. Maybe I need to go on a horror podcast and talk about my love for practical creatures, etc. And about at the halfway point, I quit the job at G4 because I was like, I can't do this and run this Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
And at the halfway point, we still were not at 250. We were like just under 200, I think, but we were already halfway through our calendar for the campaign. And the head of Kickstarter was like, you really might want to consider pulling the plug and just relaunch at 150 and then surpass that, because you can at least get to 200.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, I'm in this. I can't stop. And the language around the campaign was like, if we don't get to 500, I'm probably just going to stop doing Onyx, which was completely true.
Damn.
Because if he wasn't going to work for my true goal of making films, he needed to kind of be retired, and I needed to say, like, good job. You know, you did well for a few years. You never got me where I wanted to go. But so at the halfway point, I did a live read of the script, and that brought in like $10,000 or $12,000 and
Nice.
got us like to like, I remember it was like 210 or 215, but it's like we're so close to the halfway goal, I wouldn't pull the plug now.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just kept pushing, and honestly we wound up surpassing 500 with still a week left.
Nice.
And our final number was like 610, I think. But I always like to say this, especially to other filmmakers, the movie was not made for $610,000. We had to then find further investors.
Right. Okay.
But that 600 grand was like, you know, seed money to then bring in. It got the train on the tracks. Like out of that money, I went ahead and started paying creature designers and specialty wardrobe prop makers so that over the next couple of months we would have assets to show to other
right.
investors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which was risky because then you're spending that money before you know you've got the hole.
Right.
But I just knew, I was like, a movie like this normally wouldn't have the time to get bespoke creature design and props that were made by this specialist in Denver. And so I just started moving on anything that would take normally too much time for an indie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's an awesome way to do it. I mean, it's a huge sum of money to be responsible for as well. So, I mean, trust me, as someone that raised a fraction of that and has had to work it out, I mean, that's you know, not looking to dive into areas that you might not be comfortable talking about on a live stream here, but as someone that raised funds, you want to put those funds into the product. Totally. And then deal with perks later. You know what I mean? And that's where it ends up being. And so people don't realize how much of an investment the filmmakers are putting into projects like this, even outside of their time, right? Because if you collect all this money from people that are willing, you know, wonderful, but it's all going to the movie. You're not taking a penny of it. And you're just putting your time in without taking a penny of it, putting all of your effort in without taking a penny of it. So It's such a weird thing. And then once the film is done and everyone's happy, then you have to worry about all of the other stuff. And it's an interesting roller coaster to be on. And I can't imagine it at a level that's basically, 7 to 9 times higher than what I was dealing with. So it's a stressful situation.
It is. But luckily the stress of like not getting something made was greater. And so I don't know.
Because this is out here. You have a legacy now that will live forever, even outside of the YouTube videos, right? Because what happens if YouTube disappears one day?
Right.
Everything goes away. But Onyx is going to be here. The Talisman of Souls. I've got my copy right here.
Yeah.
And like, it's never going to go away. I'm a big fan of physical media. And because I hate the fact that shit gets pulled off of stream places all the time, but that's like wild. this is gonna be here after you, and that's what I'm excited. Like, we're in the process of getting Blu-rays for Dylan's New Nightmare printed, and that's what I'm excited about, because it's something you've contributed to the genre, and you've done it in a full-length feature sense. So mucho credit to you in that sense.
Thank you.
Now, I do want to just real quickly, because we are doing this live and I haven't addressed the commenters just yet. But Scaredy Cast in the chat, their first thing was, Jesus!
That speaks to my Christian upbringing, that like, because that's based on me. When I have nightmares, I still wake up saying, Jesus!
By the way, one of the things that Robert and I laughed the most at on the rewatch of Onyx was, fuck you, Todd. Like, that's just so funny, dude. It's pitch perfect humor for us. Like, Onyx may not be for everyone, but he's absolutely for me, dude. Like, he's so funny.
Well, I've learned that over the years, and it helped me kind of weather some of the bad reviews that we did get, because it's so funny. Like, any bad review we got,
I can't watch this guy for more than 5 minutes.
It was just that they don't like Onyx, and so in a way, I mean, a negative review, obviously it holds more weight than like a negative YouTube comment, but at the same time, kind of not. When the content is the same, when it's a YouTube comment that says I hate this guy, and like a review from Paste Magazine that says I hate this guy, and then 500 words of I hate this guy, it's like, hey, I get it, dude. Like, you either like him or you don't. It was very liberating in that sense. Yeah. Because then I could there's no making Onyx.
It's super easy to let those roll off your back.
Yeah, because Onyx is what he is, and that's just it. And it's great because it really dictates the voice and where we're going with the movie and the tone. And I mean, it's we would talk about the edit, and we'd be like, I don't know, do we need to like do this to make Onyx less that, or do this to make Onyx more that? I was like, dude, you either like Onyx or you don't. You're in or you're out, and then it's just a matter of whether or not they enjoy the ride and what we do with the story. But
well, that leads to an unanticipated question on my end. Do you have levels of Onyx in your head? Where like, it's like, okay, how far is like, you're Onyx, right? He's your guy. So like, you are the ultimate decider there. And I've never created a character like this that I've acted myself. So I don't know, but from my perspective, it would be like, Onyx is Onyx. He does what Onyx would do. And it's like, there's not necessarily levels of Onyx. It's just Onyx. And it's whether you're on his level or whether you consider his level up here or down here. But Onyx is on Onyx's level all the time. You know what I mean? Or do you find that like, okay, I'm going to turn it up here. I'm going to turn it down here.
There's so he's kind of got one gear now. In the beginning, the videos, when I go back and watch the old videos, I'm like, wow, he didn't speak that fast, and he doesn't even sound like Onyx. He's evolved to where he's kind of now set. He's crystallized, and I think there were even times when we were making the movie where, like, my reaction to something in the book, in the grimoire, I guess it's probably the picture of me as a virgin.
What the fuck?
Yes. I think my loud, like, what the fuck?
They did me dirty.
Even my DP was like, do you want to do a take where you don't just like scream what the fuck? And I was like, no. There's no other reaction Onyx would have. Or when Onyx finds out that he gets invited to the mansion and he's at his computer and he's going, woo, 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 woo. I remember my producer Olivia and my DP Dan were like, "Do you want to do one where you don't like sound like Bob Clampett's Daffy Duck? You want?" And I was like, "No, that's all there. That I can feel, what his reaction has to be." But there were times where Olivia would clock that I was kind of maybe disengaging from Onyx a little because I was getting distracted as a director. In the middle of a scene, she could see it monitor if maybe a little of my intensity in my face dropped or relaxed. And so she would pop in and say, just do it again, but more like Onyx. I was like, got it, right. But it's not necessarily levels. It's almost more of I'm either in or I'm out. And she could kind of track when I was out because I was getting distracted.
So how was that as the director, though? Again, that's an old Hollywood question for writer directors that end up starring in the film as well. Like, what's it like directing everything when you have to be in it? Like, are you running back to Video Village all the time, or what's that like for you?
Luckily, Olivia and Dan, my producer and my DP, and are basically, I mean, I trust them, implicitly. Like if they say I need to do something again, I know they're right. Olivia can tell me exactly what I'm not going to like about that last take. Dan can tell me what I'm not going to like because of blocking or composition. And so I made a rule early. I was like, I'm not going to rewatch every take. I'm only going to watch playback if it's something I'm really concerned about, or I'm thinking that they don't know exactly what I'm looking for. But with Onyx, it's very easy to direct and act because he can, I can conjure him very quickly these days. I think if I was, like, for instance, the Little Willie short film, if we make a feature of that, I do not want to act in it because I don't think I right now could be in a dramatic role and then also directing and writing and thinking about the edit too. I would much rather watch somebody be Adam, the character in Little Willie, in the feature, and have freedom as a director to have eyes on the screen the entire time. But with Onyx, it's different because he's really second nature to me. So it's easy to slip into him, and I can most of the time still be thinking about everything else as a director. It would only be when something wasn't quite working the way I wanted it to where Olivia could clock that I was disengaging a little. Yeah.
Well, have you thought about approaching Alex Vincent to play Adam?
Well, I almost think that would be too
much.
Too same. Because the weird thing is, it is not based on him, but it's really based on, it's based on a couple things. It's based on my feelings of being in a world. I can look at my life and say I'm a failed child actor, because I didn't book any of those big jobs that I went out for like 8 years of my life. So it's partially an amalgam of my own feelings around being a child actor, and then also it's a kind of about me being Onyx and being only one thing to a lot of people,
right?
And how much that's wonderful if you can embrace it and also try to find power to keep reinventing yourself and other avenues to keep creating that interest you. But it is a little bit about that trap. If somebody sees you, it still doesn't bother me because I need Onyx to work and thrive. But if somebody comes up to me and they were like, if I couldn't get another feature going, so maybe in a year I'll resent Onyx, but I doubt it. But like, if I couldn't get another feature going when I really dreamt of making a House Mother or a Little Willie, and in like 2 years someone comes up to me and says, I don't know, Onyx is pretty cool, I might be like, shut up, because like if I eventually started to feel like he trapped me in something when I wanted to do other things. So I'm investigating things like that with Little Willie, and it's less about the Andy Barclay, the Alex Vincent, and the Child's Play of it all. It's just that Child's Play influenced me as a horror fan.
Sure.
And so I've connected those things, but it's not directly about
that makes sense.
About him, yeah.
Okay, and then so now regarding Onyx, you mentioned briefly your love of practical stuff early on when you were talking about your influences. Was that always the plan, was to go practical with as much of the effects as you could? or was that? I mean, obviously, that's not usually a budgetary choice because CG tends to be cheaper than practical these days.
Yeah, the truth is, I had only I pictured most things to be practical, but I didn't picture them to be puppets. I pictured a lot of them to be makeups. I pictured the box demon to be even somebody's face with some additive elements of prosthetic makeup and maybe some elements that would be puppeteered. Because I always pictured him to be, I think my initial image of him, he almost had like tentacles. But I pictured the beefy bad boy to be a puppet. I pictured the Abaddon demon to be more of like a pumpkin head, a man in a suit.
Really? Okay.
On stilts. Because initially the Abaddon dream sequence happened in the mansion. And I had Abaddon kind of stalking around the mansion and Onyx hiding in hallways. But then we set it at the meat hut at some point during a rewrite. But when I reached out to the creature designer, Adam Doherty, about just making Beefy Bad Boy, he read the script and said, well, I think maybe all the creatures should be puppets. And I was like, what do you mean? Even the ghouls? Like the ghouls are going to be the actors in makeup. And he was like, yeah, but what if we did really cool puppets where they could even look more distorted and cartoonish, things that you can't achieve with makeup? And as soon as he showed me a couple sketches, I was like, oh my gosh, you're so right. You're right. That's more in line with the personality of the film. Onyx is about being stuck in childhood and having these playthings, and talking to puppets is totally in line thematically with being obsessed with toys and battle cats. And it almost could be looked at as it's just kind of a journey into his psyche. So Adam's the one that really unlocked that. And it's so funny because it's just as much the personality of the movie as Onyx is. Like his work is so a part of the aesthetic of the film in a way that I'm really, really proud of. He's the one that said, what if Abaddon was this big crouched puppet? And he drew that next to the meat hut. I've got a little meat hut miniature back here. Oh, really?
Okay.
I've got a meat hut miniature that has a little miniature Abaddon.
Oh, that's sick.
And but it's his vision that pushed it in that direction. Like he almost had to like wake me up to that.
That's great. Like that's part of what I love about film. It's such a collaborative effort. Making Dylan's the Miko brought ideas, Vince brought ideas, and it just makes the product better when it's a collaborative effort for sure. So
yeah.
What was it like working with screen legends like Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton?
I mean, it was a dream. I'd worked with Barbara a couple times. She was in the short film I did of House Mother.
Yep.
And Jeffrey I'd never worked with, except I shot an Onyx sketch at Monster Palooza where I'm interviewing Barbara, and Jeffrey on his own accord decided to get up from his booth and like interrupt us as a bit, and it was great. It was a really funny little cameo, and then Onyx was able to look at the camera and go, that just happened, and be super excited. But I wonder if he even remembers that bit. But I never worked with him in a narrative context. And the first day, well, Barbara's the one that suggested Jeffrey for the film, because I had thought about how much I wanted to work with Jeffrey because he's one of my all-time favorites. But I always thought, Herbert West and a lot of the characters he plays kind of occupy the same space as Onyx occupies. A lot of times he's this kind of wily underdog that when he's pushed too far, he gets a little crazy. But I had never pictured him as the kind of looming Hammer horror villain. And I was really for a while, I was stuck on it being a British actor. And I wanted someone that reminded us of a Christopher Lee or a Peter Cushing.
Okay.
And then I met with Barbara at a restaurant here in LA, and we were just talking about the state of the film and where we were with financing and how close we were. And we were getting pretty close. It looked like it was going to happen. But I said, I just still haven't settled on a Bartok. And she said, have you thought about Jeffrey? I think she was kind of surprised I hadn't, because she knows how huge of a Stuart Gordon fan I am. And I said, I just didn't see him as that villain. And she said, well, you haven't seen what he can do now. At his age and with his experience, Jeffrey's got everything. He's got the whole tool, skill set in his tool bag. So I reached out to him, and I could tell from one conversation on the phone that he was the dude. He got the world, he got the tone. He had really specific questions about how we were going to shoot the puppets, and that we were going to take it seriously and not make a joke about the artifice of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when he's asking specific questions like that, you realize like, oh, yeah, he's the right guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first day on set is him. It's actually on the Blu-ray because it was a deleted scene, but it's him kind of roasting all of us. He comes back from the dead and he stands up and he says like, look at you, where you've got nothing going on in your life. And look at you, you piece of trash. And he's just kind of going down the line, roasting his own followers. And I was on cloud nine. This is the performance I envisioned.
That's awesome.
And he's doing it, but he's doing it in his unique way where he's still super crazy at times and unhinged. And there were moments where I felt like I was on a Stuart Gordon set.
Well, it's funny too. Like my first exposure that I can remember to Jeffrey Combs was his character in The Frighteners.
I know.
And so
yeah.
like it's so funny when he pops up, because then I eventually expanded my repertoire and went back and watched From Beyond and all that stuff. You know, like all the stuff that he's in when he's younger and things like that. And man, he's such a talented individual. And so seeing him but he's so individual, right? As soon as I saw him on the TV screen, because he's dead, right, laying there otherwise, I was like, oh shit, they got Jeffrey Combs, and it was such a B-free role. It was really cool to see. So that was exciting as a horror fan. So just as a brief side note, it doesn't have to be a long answer, but did you always have the origins of I don't know in mind?
So I actually had improvised that in an old sketch that I did of Onyx. I did an hour-long session with a therapist as Onyx, and the therapist knew the therapist was real, and she knew that I was doing a character, but she also knew I would take the session seriously, and she really wanted to see what Onyx was for me. Why? Okay. She clocked this really early. I reached out to her and I said, I want to record this. I do a comedy bit about this guy. And she looked at a couple of his videos and she was like, I'll do this, but it's because I think Onyx is a lot more than just a comedic persona for you. And I was like, okay, whatever, let's just do this bit. But then over the course of this hour-long session with her, she was so smart, and she was asking questions that she knew would basically trigger a response from Onyx, but also kind of get to what Andrew thinks about it all. And I realized over the course of that session that a lot of Onyx's stories are my stories from childhood. I mean, even in the film, buying a Cabbage Patch doll or having a crush on Rebecca Love Rodriguez, or a friend of mine thinking I was getting a hand job at a movie theater, but all that was happening was
the Rogue Colonel.
The Rogue Colonel. All that stuff's real from my life. And so this therapist really clocked that. And at some point in that session, I improvised. She said, why do you say that? Why do you say that? I don't know. And I was kind of forced to come up with a reason as an improviser. And that's what I improvised, was a story about my father leaving. And as he left, I said, when will you be back? And he said, I don't know. And it got cut from that sketch, though, because it was almost too heavy for that sketch. And the sketch now, it's like 6 minutes long. But it always stayed in my head as being something that felt true to me and to Onyx, but it just wasn't the right time to like present that backstory. And so when I sat down to write the script, I had Jessminder just naturally in one of those first scenes said what that therapist said. Why do you say that? And I realized, oh, I don't know how we're going to get there, but we'll get to Onyx.
The box demon was such a brilliant way to do it too.
Yeah, and I think when I came up, initially there was another ritual. There was a ritual of, there was always the box demon, but then I think there was a fourth ritual before the fifth being the Abaddon Rising. But yeah, when I hit on the box demon and it being, I had a rule that, like, I mean, there's definitely jokes in the movie that are only jokes, but I also wanted most of the jokes to also support character and, you know, some story movement.
There's so many through lines that start as jokes that end up being battle cats. Start as jokes, and then the figures make a difference, and then the glorious underwear reveal at the end. You know what I mean? Right. You're very intelligent about writing those things. I applaud you as a writer myself. It's really well done.
Thank you. That's the stuff that really I get excited about. And sometimes I'll fill scripts with too many of those things. And so I've learned to dial everything. I has to be seeded and paid off. Everything has to be foreshadowed. And the truth is, not everything does. But my mind normally goes to that. Everything's got to lace through. There's got to be symmetry to everything and callbacks to everything. But, you know, I mean, the first Onyx video, he talks about being Onyx the Fortuitous and not Mark who works at Arby's, which becomes the plot of this movie. And or hating his stepdad becomes an element of this film. But anyway, all that to say, oh wait, what were we? I lost track of completely what my answer was.
Well, it was the origins of I don't know. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So all that to say, Jessminder threw that out, and I thought, oh okay, I get where we're going. And then when I thought of the box demon, I thought, not only will that get us to the I don't know flashback, but it'll be funny that he has to give it a secret first, so he'll say something about his wiener and Gadget Hackers. Like, it's twofold, which meant like, okay, I'll move on that. If an idea was not twofold, I normally wouldn't. But if it can be funny and move the story forward, then it's like, well, that's a go. That's a go.
Well, and I loved also, speaking of Gadget, it made me think of the animations at the end. Like, as someone that had a bunch of backers to shout out in my credits, I was like, okay, let me pull up behind the scenes photos while everyone's waiting. And you were just like, okay, everyone's got to watch this long credit sequence. Let's have some fun and do these little animations. Like, I thought that was a really brilliant choice too. Like, you made a lot of really great choices with the film.
Thank you.
And shout out to you for it. Returning to the comments just briefly here, we have Neva29. Hey, Bowser, love your work. And also said, I wonder what cryptid Bowser would make a movie about. We'll head to that in just a second. Jax B the Ripper says, I saw you at the band Ghost. How I missed the Mothman and the hentai one. So he missed those two ones. So all right. My favorite thing about Bowser's characters is he creates a whole world that makes them seem like live action cartoons. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And then finally, a movie to watch while I drink my tiny wines, says Haunted by Horror. That is great. Something I actually pointed out to Robert. Again, I'm a big fan of the humor that you portrayed, and that is one where it's just visual humor. He's reaching into a box that's off screen. It's all audio, and you're just like smiling, looking at everyone as you're searching. Cut back to you again. Cut back, and then cut back, like, oh, there it is, and then and then done.
Tiniest sip.
It's just it's really like, it's humor that doesn't get enough credit when it's done right. You know what I mean? Yeah. So shout out to you for that.
Thank you. I love that stuff. I love like timing based jokes and audio jokes, and that wasn't in the script. In the script, he reaches for a tiny sip, but on the day when I was digging, the sound just made me laugh. So then we did it for a long period of time, and then it was making the actors laugh. So I thought, oh, well, that's clearly got to go in the movie. Yeah. Well, the cryptid question is easy because I've made a movie about a cryptid. I made a movie called Jimmy Tupper versus the Goat Man of Bowie, which is a cryptid from my hometown of Bowie, Maryland. And, I mean, there's goat men all over the place. There's like a goat man of Texas, but the goat man of Maryland, the goat man of Prince George's County is kind of known in the cryptid community. And I made it as a found footage film. That's the one that I made that follows all the rules, you know. It doesn't stop unless somebody could have actually reached the camera and pressed stop, and it only records when somebody could have recorded. And also in the middle of the tape, a character takes the camera away to go film his brother's graduation. So there's 6 minutes of a high school graduation in the middle of the tape. And that actually got into South by Southwest in 2010, which was really awesome because the movie cost $400 to make.
Nice.
But I've always thought, you know, there's a world where I could make a real Goatman movie. I really like the lore around it. And I'd love to make something that is like proudly a Maryland movie, because I love the state that I'm from, and Goatman would be a good way to do it.
There you go. Scaredycast says, Bowser and Chobot's Bizarre States podcast inspired us to start our show back in 2017, so they hold a special place in our heart. Hope to see more Onyx movies in the future.
That's awesome.
And then Tyler Adams, oh man, that scene in the bed wishing for a different life makes me cry every time. So yeah, awesome nice work there. Okay, so let's see. Is there a chance for Onyx and the Demon's Wrath or some other such sequel?
Totally. I have the folder, I think it's on my desktop here, and it's like Onyx sequel drafts. Yeah, it's right here. I had started writing a sequel prior to Sundance last year, and I actually got pretty far. I got halfway through the script, but I've gotten all the way through my little outline, and I would love to make it. I don't know what it would take. It's definitely bigger, but it's not too much bigger. I hoped and prayed that the Onyx movie would have a life, but I didn't necessarily assume it would have a life that would guarantee me like a $20 million sequel. So I've still written a pretty small, manageable sequel.
Seems like it's been #1 on Screambox since it's been released.
Yeah, it has, which is really awesome. I feel like as the weeks go on, I've gotten more feedback and more people finding it and writing it, and I really haven't even pushed it very much on my TikTok account, which I keep meaning to like get clips out and put them up. It's hard with TikTok because I put up the Todd and Onyx scene with them being like, fuck you,
fuck you, Todd.
Yeah.
That shit is so good.
Yeah, and TikTok was like, we're throttling this. You can't. It got 200 views, and I was like, all right.
Can't threaten violence. Yeah,
you can't threaten violence. It looks like bullying. It looks like a fight. It looks, and it's full of F words. But so I've got to find some clips to put up that are clean, if that's possible. But yeah, I would love to make a sequel, and I think I was smart in keeping it relatively small, but it kind of next levels the things you'd want. There's definitely a couple of new creatures. The cast is really the same, though. It's about Farah just trying to take back the mansion from Onyx and his crew.
There you go.
And but she's got a couple other kind of sidekick villains at her side, along with Bartok's head in a jar.
You know, there's tons of meme potential, dude. You should be able to cut clips out on TikTok. That searching scene, like looking for your keys before getting out of the house, or like,
totally,
you know, just acting like you're trying to find something instead of engaging in conversation. You know,
exactly.
I mean? Like, tons of opportunity there.
Oh, I know, yeah.
So I do have something special I wanted to try and attempt at the end of the interview here, but before we get there, if you could do a dream project, and so this is a two-part question. One, if you could helm a film about anything, any horror property that already exists, what would that be? And then B, what would your dream project be if not doing something like that?
Well, do you mean like a horror project? Well, actually,
if you could take over any slasher, any property, anything like that, and do your version, what would that be?
Totally. So, well, there's a couple things. Number one would be Pumpkinhead. I mean, well, number one is Gremlins, but I think that's for a lot of people my age.
Yeah.
Pumpkinhead. Yeah. I mean, I would absolutely love to bring Gremlins back. I don't think there's any filmmaker more influential to me than Joe Dante. It's Joe Dante and Zemeckis, and then oddly enough Michael Haneke. But so Gremlins would definitely be number one. But Pumpkinhead might be a more realistic, just because that property has been in flux and they've been trying to get it remade. I've even emailed I think the producer who I believe has the rights, and I've said like, dude, Pumpkinhead is my guy. Can I please pitch on this? And I've gotten no response, but I've got a Pumpkinhead pitch. I went to a Pumpkinhead screening at the Draft House in LA on a Tiki Tuesday, and I had like 3 tiki drinks, and I sat down in the Draft House lobby after the film and wrote out an entire outline for my remake idea. And then also, but I would really love to make, and I've brought this up to the creators of this podcast, the podcast How Not to Make a Movie, which is about the making of Bordello of Blood. I would love to make, you know, like a disaster artist or Ed Wood style film about the making of Bordello of Blood.
That's a great idea. That movie is shit after Demon Night. So
I know, and their podcast is wonderfully insightful into why it went off the rails. And oh my gosh, I think it would really activate all sides of me. I mean, there's so much comedy there, but it's all really grounded. You've got Dennis Miller acting like a maniac, Corey Feldman threatening to fight him.
Some gorgeous vampire ladies walking around.
Gorgeous vampire ladies. Stallone's involved because he was dating.
Really?
Yeah. he was dating Angie Everhart at the time. You got
That's
Joel Silver being an absolute maniac. I mean, it's such an amazing story. It's not really mine to tell. I think it's Al Katz and the other creator or the other showrunner of Gil Adler of Tales from the Crypt. But if they wrote it and they'd let me direct it, oh my gosh, I would just die.
So the last thing I have is where's the best, like, what is the best way for people to support you? Before we get to that, though, I was hoping, if you're okay with it, is there any chance we could do a lightning round with Onyx?
Oh, definitely. It'll be Onyx in glasses and a baseball hat. It's fine. It'll be Onyx as close as I can get it.
I mean, are you telling me you can't just stand up and do a Wonder Woman spin and turn into Onyx?
I have dreamed of that. I have dreamed of having, an Iron Man style nanotech suitcase that just like covers me in Onyx's clothes. I don't know when that technology will be available to me.
All right, so
I'll at least take my glasses off so my eyes look more like Onyx.
Fantastic. All right, so this is just 10 questions. They don't have to be super long answers, of course, but first let me go ahead and welcome you, Onyx, to the Horror Show channel.
Oh, yeah, thanks for having me, Cecil.
I'm a big fan of your work, and I really enjoyed the look into your recent adventures. So I do have to ask, what got you into horror, and specifically the devil, Marcus? Or do you prefer me just to call you Onyx?
Oh no, you can call me Marcus, or you can call me the Trill if you just want to call me the Trill. But yeah, I guess what got me into the devil was probably watching The Secret of Nim. If you remember that movie.
Yeah, the owl scared the shit out of me.
Yeah. I think that's what did it. That's what attracted me to the darker side, and double feature between that and the Black Cauldron got me pretty stoked on all things demonic. I don't know.
That's awesome. Well, that's a very good answer, the Trill. Thank you very much. How did your love of the genre evolve from there, good sir?
Well, anybody that knows me knows that I'm a big goo head. So, yeah, I'm obsessed with the goo. And when I saw Gremlins 2 and they all melted at the end, while they were singing that Frank Sinatra song, I was all in. At that point, I was like, yeah, there's no going back. I'm a goo hound.
Yeah, I believe if I'm not mistaken, souls are made of goo based on your experience.
Yeah, that's actually, I think that's like science. I think Joe Rogan even said that the soul is made up of goo, so it's got to be true.
I saw you on Rogan. That was an impressive, a good get, man. You got on Hot Ones. You got on Rogan. You are a popular dude.
Yeah, everybody wanted a piece of the Trill.
So, to whom do you attribute your special style that you have? I mean, you normally, obviously, you're in pretty chill mode today, but normally you have a very, very unique style. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I've always imagined my origin story to be like if Elvira and Pee Wee Herman were taking a bath together, and then they had a TV sitting on the side of the bathtub that was showing a Micro Machines commercial. And that TV fell into the bathtub and electrocuted all of them. And Elvira, Pee Wee Herman combined with the spirit of the Micro Machines guy. I don't know. And that's kind of like what makes up my DNA.
That is fantastic. Yeah. And just as a little side note, I'm not trying to dive deep into past or anything, but, I appreciate the reason why, I don't know, it comes out as often as it does, so we're all here for you.
Thank you.
The Trill. Do you finally find respect at the Meat Hut after your adventures, or not so much?
Oh, man, I'm going to be honest. I went back to the Meat Hut after my big adventure, and I was like, oh, yeah, y'all, it's me, the Fortuitous one. And Masha was like, shut the fuck up, Marcus. So I don't think it changed anything very much.
Still haven't gotten that new name tag?
Haven't gotten the new name tag, and have zero respect for Masha.
Are you haunted by the events of your trip to Bartok's mansion? I mean, I know you guys kind of run it now, but do you ever have nightmares or anything like that?
No, I mean, every once in a while I have a nightmare that I can't find my most valuable minifig, Battle Cat's minifig, but then I wake up and realize I've been sleeping on top of a pile of my minifigs, and so that fear quickly dissipates. No, all my adventures in the mansion I hold near and dear to my heart.
Fantastic. All right, good to know. So was your experience with Bartok your only true, quote unquote, true paranormal experience thus far, or have you had other experiences since?
Well, no, I guess the only thing that would be close to that supernatural experience was that I had a dream that I got a blowy from a ghost once, like Dan Aykroyd's character in Ghostbusters. But then I realized it was just a dream and didn't in fact happen. So it doesn't rate anywhere near my adventures in Bartok's mansion.
Well, that sounds like a better dream than the dream that you mentioned in the movie where you didn't fuck. So
yeah, totally. Yeah, I almost got a ghost blowy. Yeah.
So if you could battle, so Onyx, you obviously very familiar with the horror genre. If you could battle any horror icon from throughout the years, who do you think you'd have the best opportunity against?
Oh, I've been waiting to say this. I think Rawhead Rex is a little bitch. So yeah, I could take down Rawhead Rex real easy, and I don't even care if he's watching this live stream right now. I don't know. You heard it. I'm gonna beat the shit out of Rawhead Rex.
You better hope he's not watching. He is a regular commenter. So.
Oh yeah. Oh.
So let me ask, like, you're a fan of evil, but you also want to make sure the world isn't destroyed by demons. So
yeah.
If you, Onyx, could end evil in all of its forms right now, would you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would end evil as long as that didn't end goo. So if we could get rid of all the evil, but somehow like keep gooey monsters alive, then I would do it in a heartbeat.
Okay, fair enough. Very practical answer. So the last question is, what's next for the Trill? What's next for Marcus the Onyx the Fortuitous?
Well, hopefully y'all get to see me go on another adventure. I don't know. I've got a whole idea in my head about learning more about Farah and her backstory and seeing how me and my squad could evolve and become even bigger heroes than we were in our first film. So hopefully that happens. But if not, I'll just be chilling at the mansion watching Alf reruns. So.
I'd be very interested to see Mr. Duke's final werewolf form.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully that would be involved there. So
yeah, he hulks out and he beats the shit out of Rawhead Rex.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for taking the time to Trill. I really appreciate that. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to just finish up with Andrew, if that's cool.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
There he is. Welcome back.
Clark Kent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for doing that. That was a thrill for me, to be honest with you.
Oh, no problem.
So yes, Andrew, what's the best way that our viewers can support you? Where can they go? What can they do?
I mean, my YouTube channel, even though I said it was dormant, meaning I don't get as many views as I used to, but I'm still very active on it. It's just youtube.com/BOWSERvids totally. And I've recently relaunched my Patreon just to try and kind of replicate the experience I had with the Kickstarter, where all these people kind of came in to my world and we built a little community. I'm trying to do that with the next project. I'm basically trying to bring people onto my Patreon and read scripts that I'm working on, House Mother and Little Willie, and another idea that I'm developing. And so they could go to patreon.com/BOWSERvids and find me there.
So you have a full-length script for Little Willie?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of rewriting it. I realized, I went back and reread it after Onyx was completed, but I realized just tonally it's a little too comedic for, I think, what I am interested in right now, because I hadn't really scratched that itch at a feature level, but now I have with Onyx, so I'm actually doing a rewrite on Little Willie to, weirdly enough, just to make it more tonally like the short. The short is pretty somber.
Short feels like it's American Psycho mixed with Chucky. Yeah. Like that's kind of what the feeling is, which is dope.
Yeah, that's a good description for it. That's definitely the intended blend. And for some reason, when I wrote the feature a couple of years ago, I went maybe a little more comedic. So I'm doing a rewrite on it right now, and we're gonna be kind of like covering that on my Patreon and talking. I'm gonna let people read the script from 5 years ago or 3 years ago, and then watch as I send in new pages. I'm gonna like upload the new draft, and people can kind of like see my process, for better or for worse.
No, that's great. That's great. And if you wouldn't mind, send me over the link to that Patreon. I'll link it in the description box of this episode so people can go right to it. What a cool way to use Patreon, dude. Like, everyone's like, ooh, special reviews, including us, just like Patreon exclusive reviews. But giving actual content that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. That's the way to do it. So
yeah, and I like talking about them. I like kind of demystifying the creative process, because there is a certain amount of magic to it, and even artists and writers don't know where everything comes from, but there's a certain amount of just like really pragmatic, you know, this thing's not working, I need to fix it, how do I fix it? And I like having those discussions, and helping people maybe get over some of their fear of just making something and moving on an idea.
Yeah,
there's no perfect idea, there's no perfect time to execute it, there's no perfect final version. You know, it's like, just make stuff.
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, thank you very much for taking the time. I don't want to take up any more of yours, but I really appreciate it. And guys, make sure you go and support Andrew however you can. Check out his Patreon. Again, I'll get the link and I'll put it in the description box so you guys can go follow him and listen to, or you know, take a look at his script. If you haven't seen Little Willie, the short film, that's available for everyone on YouTube? They can go check it out?
Yeah, it's actually on Alter's YouTube channel.
Right.
And so
Alter's a great horror channel. So
yeah, the easiest way to find it is just to go to search Little Willie Alter.
There you go.
You'll find it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for taking the time, and thank you guys for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel the way that you do. But until next time, I've been Cecil Laird, and I was lucky enough to be joined by Andrew BOWSER and Onyx the Fortuitous.
That's right.
Which, damn it, I actually had a separate name tag for Onyx when he was on, but I didn't switch it. I knew I'd get too caught up.
Oh no.
But all right, thank you very much. And until next time, I've been Cecil Laird, and remember, guys, stay scared.